Welcome to Sprinkle Hope podcast with your host, Jason. And we are so excited to have Samantha Gash with us. Samantha, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
No, it's an absolute privilege to be chatting to you guys.
Yeah, you're coming all the way to us from Australia. And for you, it's morning. For us, it's getting close to the evening time. But we're really glad to have you on. So, just as an introduction for who Samantha is, in 2010, she took on the Four Deserts Grand Slam. And for those of you that don't know, it's a 250-kilometer ultra marathon across the driest desert, the windiest, the hottest, and the coldest in Chile, China, Sahara Desert, and Antarctica. That in and of itself is incredible that you did that. But, not only did she do that, she was the first woman and the youngest to do it, that's also amazing. And you had a movie made about that particular event, correct?
There was a filmmaker out there. I mean, at the time, we didn't really know what she was filming, but yes, I was one of four characters who are in the film called Desert Runners.
That's awesome. Well, if I missed anything or you'd like to fill in anything, just kind of give us a little bit of extra background on who Samantha is.
Oh, I mean, I guess that's my starting experience in the world of ultra marathoning. And then there's the me before I even knew this thing existed. And I guess bizarrely, I wasn't even a runner. I wasn't even a sporty person. So it was the world of ultra marathon running that kind of opened up a completely different lens of the world to me. And it's not because I loved the run. I loved what this experience was, the people that you meet, the places that you go, what you discover about yourself. And I would say, yeah, I guess I started my ultra running career in those competitive races. And then I was drawn far more into, how do you create your own adventure? And I actually think that's really relevant for the time that we live in now when, so many races can't operate. But we still need to feel like we're achieving goals and we're being physically mobile where we can, and we can still be exploring like our boundaries. So I feel happy in the sense that I took it upon myself to make sure that I could live the life that I want to lead. Because sometimes things happen to us not of our choosing. And I think, when you push the bound in ultramarathon running, it can actually facilitate you knowing how to extend yourself in other areas of your life as well.
Yeah, that's something that I found fascinating as I was looking at your history, that you talk a lot about that, the push to get through that boundary, and not so much the race itself, but that mental challenge that you have to go through. So for those of us like me included, that aren't runners, that don't even like to run a mile,
Yeah.
Talk about the difference between the mental and the physical challenges of a race like that. I'm just curious to pick your brain and see, how do you see that mental and that physical challenge?
Yeah, well, I think it starts from the very beginning. So thinking that you can sign up for something like this, I think it starts with the mental. If you've never done something like this before, I think a good dose of naivety is not a bad thing. Maybe a little bit of ego. And I think those sometimes bolster our confidence and self-belief that what is impossible based on the fact that we've never done it before can be possible for us. So I think that's kind of like start line, well, not even pre-start line. And then I think to get to the start line, you actually need to kind of drop the ego a little bit to like mentally prepare yourself. And of course, the physical is a component of that, but it's like the reason for me, like I come from a legal background. So I always used to go, what I lack in physical experience, I'm going to make up for it with my methodical application to every element of what an ultramarathon is. And there's more than just the run. There's a lot of these races require you to have kit. So like your gear, mandatory items, then items that you perceive are essential for you. And so that's analysis and that's trial and error. I'm very small. I'm under 5 foot. And so I always have to be really critical in my analysis, deciding what's essential to cross a desert versus what's a luxury item, because my body just can't handle the weight. I think for a lot of people my size, I might go, well, I just can't do that. I can't carry the packs that I see the guys carrying. But I think we all have perceived disadvantages. Some are obvious and some can be more concealed. And so if everyone on the start line of a race has a perceived disadvantage and everyone in the world has a perceived disadvantage, you may as well just focus on your assets and your strengths. Otherwise, it's going to be a limitation for you trying new things. And then when the race starts, it is a blend of physical and mental. But then when you get to about 2/3 of the race, so much of it is mental. Yeah. You want to have done the training, and there's a lot of people who probably go in with too much naivety, and then they'll just, hopefully they can just use their willpower to kind of get them through in whatever way possible. But if you want to do it in a way that is not going to break you physically and sustain your well-being after the event, I think you want to focus on your physical training, and then you want to focus on mental. And most importantly, I like to think of all the challenges that might come my way in those events, knowing that I probably won't ever think of all of them. Now, being experienced, I probably can think of a good portion of them.
Yeah.
But then I don't just like to think of them. I like to kind of visualize how I will overcome them. And so that bolsters up my confidence that really I can tackle the situations that might come my way. And it also takes the element of surprise out the window. So if I think, I might get dehydrated. Okay, what will that look like? If I think that I might get lost, which has happened many times, what will that look like? If I didn't wear my lucky underwear, like what will I do? Just all these different things that could happen. And then, I think that's been definitely an asset for me going through that process before the event even starts. Because, and sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're great.
Okay. Thank you. I'll take that. I think when you get to mental and physical overwhelm, it's like any type of anxiety or stress, in any arena. They're actually the same. Physical stress and mental stress, they're just stress to the body. And so when you're at that brink, I think we think there are too few options at our disposal. And so it's very easy to quit when you're there. And so part of the game is working out, whilst you're working alongside stress, you've got to play with it. You've got to know how that stress can be good and to keep it at bay and to reduce it where possible, because if you get into a crux situation of a crisis, you need to know how to be able to think of everything that you can do before quitting. Yeah,
I love that. And I think that a lot of, we can take that analogy of, you preparing for this race, right? And put it in, this thing we called life. And,
yes,
and you can try to think of all the scenarios in your head of the things that are going to come up, right? Like you're preparing for this race, you're thinking, okay, I could get dehydrated, I could get cold, I could get, overheated, all of these things. And you can kind of try to prepare yourself, but ultimately you may not know until you go through an experience. So how have you found to relate your running with, dealing with this thing called life?
Well, they say, I read a book a while ago, and once again, I'm looking at my bookshelf for the inspiration of the name, but I think it was about like enduring. And they talked about how life, ultra marathons are so similar to life in general, except it's like life condensed, because the degree and the number of psychological challenges that you go through in a short period of time. And I just think the more you go beyond your known, the more you build up your toolkit for survival, for your capacity to endure. And so I think sometimes people who are runners, they isolate what they learn in the run to just running, and then they don't know how. And I think in vice versa, I do a lot of things with like women in the outdoors, and I've recently created an organization, a company called Her Trails, which is about equipping women with skills and confidence to go out into nature and to wild places and move their bodies, whether it's through running or hiking or mountain biking. And I hear so many women in their 30s and 40s and 50s say to me, but I never learned how to be self-reliant in the outdoors as a kid. Like I didn't know how to set a fire. I don't know how to carry a pack. I don't know how to X, Y, Z, and then I go, do do you not realize that in all the other things that you do in your life, you have untapped the capacity for self-reliance? You know how to be a lateral thinker. You know how to problem solve under duress. You know how to like focus really hard, and then you know how to multitask when you have to. You know, all these skill sets are so good into other arenas. Don't just silo them into one experience.
I think that is such great wisdom. When you were talking about at the starting line that you could see people's challenges or whatnot, the physical aspect of that. And I was thinking about the mental side of that as well, that there are certain things that I think that you can't see those things, but you have to mentally prepare yourself for something that challenging. So, not only are you a runner, but you have raised well over $1 million for charities. I think that's very commendable. So pat yourself on the back. That's great. So why are you motivated to do that as well? Like, I know running is great and that's a release for people, but why tie in the raising money for these charities?
Well, the first thing I'll respond to is kind of when you said there's things that are going to happen that you don't know. How do you meant to prepare yourself? Like, I just want to say, like, that's the adventure part of it. Like, you're not meant to know everything. Like, that's why we do these things. Like, we actually, if it was all set in stone, if we knew what the process would look like, we knew 100% what the end destination would be. I mean, is that really exciting?
Yeah.
And so I think even a more broader definition of adventure is a journey with an unknown outcome. And these are journeys of our choosing and not of our choosing. So a global pandemic, I'll say, was an adventure, not of our choosing. But, and I know you guys in the States are still very much in the thick of it. And we, like where I live in Victoria, we did it really tough last year too. We were in stage 4 lockdown for 120 days where we couldn't leave a 5-kilometer radius of our home. We were only allowed to be outside for 1 hour a day. And no businesses could operate if they couldn't operate from home. So that was for 120 days.
Wow.
We were told it would last for 6 weeks. So like, we're in a really great situation right now in Australia, but we have kind of gone through a hardship with it as well. And now people who are on the other side of it, it's people starting to go, oh, there were things that I actually took out of that time. Like, I learned how to simplify my life. I might not have been earning the income that I previously had earned, but I learned to remove my subscriptions, with the exception of Netflix. And, I've never been grounded before, so I've never spent so much time with my children. And yes, it was really hard to homeschool them, but we did create some rituals in that time frame that I would like to keep now. And I'm always really careful saying this to a broad audience, because some people are doing it really, really, really tough, that don't have the fundamentals of a roof over their head and food on their table. But for everyone else who can make it work with those fundamentals at play, there are silver linings. And it's like all the balls are thrown up in the air, and which ball do you now want to choose? You don't necessarily have to be on autopilot anymore. Like, you can kind of when you get to a crux and it feels like the worst thing in the world that could possibly happen to you, it's almost the most beautiful thing, because there's now choice about where you want to go next.
I love that analogy, because I just envisioned all these balls going up and you grab the one that's most important for you. That's not a right or wrong. That's not a wrong decision. That's the one you want. So I love that analogy.
I mean, the only thing that we can control sometimes is our response. And I think that's really powerful. I mean, it reminds you that you're in the driver's seat. That Dr. Seuss saying, like, and then you can steer yourself whichever direction you choose.
Yeah.
I mean, we sometimes don't own our responses. We just kind of like bumble around life and get told what to do and go to work at the same time and live rigidly. I mean, when we're kids, we have such open minds about who we want to be and what we want to do. And the older we become, the more fixed we become in our thinking and more limited we become in our dreaming. And so why should there not be the ability that through a global pandemic, we actually start to think about how we want to live our lives in this moment, but also post-pandemic?
Yeah, I love that analogy as well with the balls. It kind of reminded me of an analogy that I heard a couple of years ago, which was, you got all these things that are going on in life, family and work and all this stuff, and you're juggling them, but they're glass balls, right? And so you're juggling these glass balls, and it's like, which ones do you really not care too much about that you can just drop and they'll shatter? Right. So like family, we don't want to drop that one. We're going to keep juggling that one. And so I loved that you brought that to the mind's eye, right? Like that these things are juggling and we can choose which ones we want to pull out.
I like that glass part of it. It reminds me of there's this theory called the 4-burner theory. And it's like each burner of the stove represents a different area of your life, family, I think it's friends, work, and health. And they say to be really, really successful, I think only 1 or maybe 2 burners can be on. And to just be like generally successful, I think you can have maybe 3 burners going. And so it's like, it is choice. Everything we say yes to, that does mean that we're saying no to something else. And so again, it's that whole thing of choice. Like we actually have choice in what we want to do. And I think a lot of people forget that they have choice about their lives.
Yeah.
And then you said, because I can be on a completely different tangent, you asked about why do I use running and kind of connect it to social advocacy and fundraising. Really early in my run career, it got to this point where I saw that I was pushing myself so hard, like both mentally and physically. Sorry, my little son's about to walk into the room.
It's all
yes,
good.
He is. Hi, Harry. We're on a podcast. You're probably going to say, I want sultanas.
Yeah.
You can sit here for a second. Of course. Dad went off to CrossFit, so he just
all right.
Harry upstairs, Do you want to have this? Let me just give him this. Do you want this? Yeah. How about you sit down? Or it's not COVID, trust me. It's daycare. They have a lot of other costs. Oh no! Okay, you try that. Here, I'll take it off. We're multitasking, guys. This is what we do. This is if we were in. Yep.
Love
where
it.
We're all. I know it's mummy. Let's give you this. Yes. I'm a parent. I love it how I don't even know how to. I'm a parent. Okay. Cool.
I love this because we're having a discussion, but Samantha needs to focus on her family right now. It's exactly what she did. Just you focus on your.
Yeah. Don't drop that ball, that glass ball,
Fantastic.
Yeah, they've got to be number 1. We can always edit this stuff post. There you go.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it, right?
Okay. The volume's got to go down, but you can have that. Mummy's just going to be a little bit longer. You sit down. Okay, we're back on. Sometimes a little bit of educational technology is not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Okay, so social advocacy. It didn't take long to me to realize in my kind of running pursuits that I started to feel a little bit empty. I started to feel like I was pushing the boundaries really excessively, and I loved that. But after you push them only, a couple of times, you're like, okay, I'm doing the same thing. Like I'm pushing it mentally and physically again and again. And I go, what does this all mean? And then there's some people who are so driven by the time and their placing and being competitive. And that is absolutely okay. If that's what wires you, then go out and do it. But if it's not what wires you, you need to find the why if you want to keep doing that thing. Otherwise you get exposed and you won't last it. And for me, I always wanted to be, my early days, I either wanted to be an actress or a lawyer. And when I wanted to be a lawyer, I wanted to be a lawyer for the UN or some form of international organization. So I've always had a bent to contribution, social advocacy, particularly like exploring the rights of women and children and access to education programs. And I just never in my wildest dreams would have thought that running an adventure and storytelling, particularly on a digital sense, would be the mechanism in which I would do that. I thought it would be like that formal legal training. And I just think sometimes, again, like if you know what is important to you, your values, what you want to achieve in this world, the way in which you do it may look different the older you get. And it may look different based on the things that you expose yourself to. So yeah. So I guess most notably, like in 2016, I ran across India and I was exploring the barriers to why children are unable to access a quality education. And, some people just look at the run and think, oh, okay, so she ran across India for 77 days. And they don't actually know that it was like a 4.5 year journey, literally just to the start line, from conceiving the idea to then developing the idea and then traveling to India and then collaborating with the largest not-for-profit organization in the world, which is World Vision. And then, and then a little bit of training, but then the rest is like logistics, because I was running across a country that's so diverse and quite complex. And then building a team in India, and then my team that I knew from home. So this is an example of where the preparation and the mindset is bigger than the physical training, but they do each have a place.
Yeah, there really is some fantastic advice that you're giving. I am loving this discussion. So Samantha, going forward, what are some things, maybe one or two things that you're most excited or looking forward to in the near future?
Oh, I mean, so much stuff. It's full of possibilities. I'm looking forward to continuing this presence with my family. I think pre-pandemic, I was in the air a little bit too much, meaning I was flying everywhere. And so now I do a lot of work as a corporate speaker. And, there's a lot of corporate speakers are like, I miss a live audience. And I totally do. I got to speak into my first live audience the other day, and I could have licked all their faces. So I was so excited to see them. But also as you can see, I've got like the mic, and I normally have a light, but you don't need to see how tired I look right now. And so Mark and I, my husband, have created a space where we can deliver really great presentations virtually. And so I'm looking forward to the hybrid of, live presentations and virtual ones, so I can be at home more with my family and not be on planes so much. I think I was on planes like 4 to 5 times a week. It's too much.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then also I've got a project planned for next year with an incredible woman called Megan Hine, who's based in the UK. And she's amazing. And, I think moving forward, what's really exciting me, and this is not to limit my ability to work with men, but I'm really excited to work with women. And, the early part of my career is very solo. And then it was myself and a team. And now it's like, I want to be myself side by side with another woman who's equally strong and creative, but our strengths are different. So we actually can create an even better, more rounded, holistic, whatever it is, because we come at it from a different perspective. So I've got a project planned with Megan next year, and then just focusing on her trails. It's like, how we talk about the balls being up in the air. I was caressing a couple of balls, and I was like, which sounds so wrong. And I was thinking, I'm going to try a couple of these. Because I don't know in this new world what's actually going to work or what I'm actually going to like. So, I had my mum saying, maybe just try one thing at a time. And I'm like, no, I'm going to try a couple, and I am going to invest in them, but I am going to use the first 6 months to kind of go, which one makes the most sense viscerally, tangibly, on a community level. And I think her trails is definitely one that just feels very, very, very right. I mean, we launched our first online program, which was a 21.1 kilometer on trail for women, but with strength, mobility, an audio guided long run podcast, a 12-part video series called Trail Time. And it's kind of taken off in a really great way, and community has been created. And I just think year 2021 and moving forward, it is going to be all about the move away from the I, the collective. And that's at least the space in which I want to see the world. And so that means everything that I do lives up to that.
That's awesome. I love the advocacy part, because I think that's, you're not just helping one or two, with that kind of money that you're raising, right? That you can really help many, many people that, for whatever reason, right, that need some help, especially right now.
A bunch of that was raised through a campaign called the Relief Run. And I don't know if you guys heard it, but I mean, in 2020, the beginning of the year, let's give him a little stroke. Oh, he's so sweet. He's just, isn't it so nice to hear? See, you hear your kid in the background, you're kind of doing a bit of work, and your fear internally is like, oh, I'm looking unprofessional, or it's going to be really annoying them. But we've all had to work at home with our children. And so like the last thing you should be doing is like telling your toddler, shh, be quiet, don't sing. Like just, it's okay. Like us as adults, like maybe there's more grace in our understanding of what it is to be professional. And in fact, it's not like they're not two separate worlds, personal and professional. Like there's a blur, and it's all on display right now. And to be a better human, meaning to be a better parent, is to kind of go, you guys can handle a little background noise that said like a child singing. We're totally cool with that.
Love it.
Totally.
I
agree.
It's true, but we have to, you know, I remember when I kind of first went back to work and I was a corporate speaker, and I like took Harry on every corporate event that I did in the first, you know, year of his life. He literally went everywhere. And so many people were like, did you ask the corporate permission if you could bring your baby? And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to ask their permission. Like, he's coming, like, what do they expect? I've got like a 4-month-old, I'm breastfeeding. Like, if they want me to go on the other side of the country, like it should be almost implied that I'm going to have my child and I'll have someone looking after him whilst I'm on stage. Sometimes it was the AV person, but most of the time I got someone there. And it's just, we need to see more displays of what it takes to be a working mother, a working father, and that this is a part of our life. In fact, this is the most important part of our life, and our work is what we do. It's not who we are. And doesn't mean that we can't be incredible at the work that we do. It's just that this is our reality.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm happy to hear that background noise. It's
well, you have to say that now, don't you?
No, actually, it's, you know, it is our reality. It is that, you know, you are a mother, you have a son that you need to care for. He needs you. You don't just say, all right, no, your timing is not very good for me. You know, he needs you when he needs you, not when you decide that it's convenient, right? You're a mom 24/7.
24/7, guys, even if you wish it was 23/7.
Exactly.
But that does link to another thing. Again, speaking about kind of, I don't know how many of your audience is women, but I think it's important for men to also hear this as well, is, you know, I recently went off and did a 10-day trip in Tasmania, a hiking trip. And a lot of people go, oh, like, how did you get out there? Like, you've got a child, he's 2.5. Like, how did you and your husband like come to this agreement that you could go away for 10 days? And I was like, I created it. Like, no one's going to give me 10 days to do something like that unless I drive it. I mean, I sometimes say to my husband, I think you should encourage him. Like, you should go on that surfing trip with the guys. Like, totally do that. It's good for you. You know, I can take care of the fort at home. This makes you, and it also, it fuels you up, and it, you know, makes you an even better, you know, dad when you're here. And so what I would say to so many people, the men and women listening to this, is if you need space, if you have passions that don't allow you to be physically present, you know, for a short period of time, try and make that happen, you know. But obviously the communication is a critical part, and understanding, you know, what are the needs of the family. But, you know, gender specific time is a great thing, as is like gender time as well. But you have to make those opportunities happen for you, because your life doesn't also just stop because you become a parent as well. Like, the things that used to excite you pre-parenthood, they're still a part of you. Yes, you have to navigate them in a different way, but you shouldn't let them go entirely. You know, I'm massively, you know, big advocate for women about finding ways of retaining the pieces of them that they had before becoming mothers. And I get it. Like, you actually have to consciously work really, really hard at it. It's not just naturally given to you.
Yeah. That's an awesome nugget right there for those that are listening. That was great advice. And this has been such a wonderful conversation. So right at the end of our podcast recordings, we do what's called the double down dose. And Shane and I individually ask a question to you. And so the first question is what is your definition of hope?
Oh, okay. I mean, I shouldn't rush it, because it's not like I have a natural one. For me, hope links to the mindset of realistic optimism. hope is acknowledging that tough things happen to us, to not pretend that's not the case. Like, it's hard, to kind of relate to someone's version of hope when they don't own the bad stuff. But they're very quickly able to flip that challenging stuff around and go, this is what I can turn it into. And this can be an opportunity for me. I often think gifts are disguised as challenges. We just don't know at the time. And so a lot of the time I go, okay, this seems really, really crappy right now. It could be an injury before a race or losing a job. You think they're horrific things, but sometimes, again, the balls are thrown up in the air. Which one am I going to now choose? And that's the realistic optimism that I think is so much about hope.
That's awesome. It's really good. So the second part of Double Down Dose usually is how would you define love? But I'm going to ask you a different question. We're starting to mix this up just a little bit. So what does passion mean to you?
Oh, passion is bravery. Passion is creativity. It's throwing yourself into unknown spaces and being comfortable in discomfort and not needing to know every single step of the way. I mean, passion is like the ability for us to, as humans, extend, which is what we were designed to do. Like, we were designed to evolve, not stick into like a very tightly constrained box. Although I will say, and I'm now moving it to a longer answer, sometimes I feel like I'm never very good at like, okay, we're going to one answer. I'm like, give me a 20-word answer.
Love it.
But like, sometimes the more successful we become, the more we actually play in our tight lane, because we're fearful of starting from the beginning again, to be a beginner. And actually, it's crazy because you think successful people are the ones that are constantly evolving and exploring, and sometimes they're not the ones, because they don't want to be at the bottom again. So I would say, whether you perceive yourself as successful or you think that, you're just the everyday Joe Blow that's doing the best that they can, everyone has an obligation and responsibility internally to extend themselves. That's what life is about. It's about kind of playing outside the lines, and choosing then when in moments we want to be in the safe zone, which is also important for our humankind and our ability to feel safe and secure. But if we want evolution, if you want to feel passion, you've got to get outside.
Yeah.
I love it. This has been such a wonderful conversation. And just in closing, one other question that I wanted to ask you is, what question do you wish more people would ask you that they don't?
No, I don't have that, because I think, Harry, okay, you pass it to me. It's so funny because he's been a little bit slow with just a little bit delayed with his speech. And so actually, when I hear him even trying to communicate with me, and I'm like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah, go for it, buddy.
Go for it. Whatever word you want to say it.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I'm so not prescriptive on what people say. I don't ever leave a conversation going, I wish they said that, because as you can tell, I'll answer the question the way I want to anyway. But as long as people are present and are listening, then that's all I can ever ask in any conversation that I ever have with someone, whether that's an interview or an informal moment. People who want to listen and don't kind of an agenda about where we necessarily go, like, that's the best conversation, because we're actually connecting and learning about each other.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have very much enjoyed this discussion. I love that you answer the question exactly how you want it to be. That's the beauty of these interviews, is that we want you to be yourself. And so, Samantha, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it was such a pleasure to start my weekend with you guys. Like, seriously, you're both such friendly faces to see. And as you know, I love Utah. So when the world opens up, I'll be kind of finding your email address and going, hey guys, let's go for a hike.
Absolutely. Let's do it. I'm totally down.
Do it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm all for it.
You'll probably destroy us, but
hey,
that's okay. Then I'll say, okay, put me on your shoulders. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do this. Absolutely. That sounds like a great adventure to me.
Yes, I love it.
Well, thank you again, Samantha, and best wishes to you and your family. We're so grateful that you came on.